Welcome, everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. My name is Pavel the Cat with my very smart and talented co-host.
Hey, I just want to wish you congratulations on the new guy in the house. So now I'm confused, buddy. I thought you said you're having a girl, but you had a boy?
I had a boy, yes. Yes, I did.
Congratulations. Yeah. Number two, are they going to be the next Two Guys in Hockey Talk? They'll be ready in what, 15 years?
Well, our guest who's coming on is going to tell me if I can draft them in the WHL. We'll see if that works. But let's get into it because we have a big guest. You want to introduce our guest, Evan, before we get to our guest headliner?
Yes, absolutely, guys. So make sure you follow us every Wednesday right here, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can follow us on X. You can follow us over on our YouTube channel. You can go right through our website, twoguysinhockeytalk.com, Facebook, anywhere basically you get stuff out there. Just jump on, find us, and you'll be able to check shows current and past. If you got some questions tonight, make sure you put them aside, whether you text them over, send them through X, send them over on Facebook and or YouTube, and we'll be sure to get them up. So why don't we go to our guest tonight? He is from the Saskatoon Blades. He is the director of scouting, and he is a guy that I started following probably back in 2010, and the things that he was doing, loved. He's got a voice for radio and TV and everything you say. You're going to love him. He's got a lot of information, great stories, but more than anything, guys, I'm glad to present to you guys tonight Dan Tencer. Here's our guest headliner of the night. Guest headliner. Brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show.
Welcome, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great tonight, and congratulations on the new family edition. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, he was born on Saturday night, right after the Oilers game. So priorities are straight, where he can let Dad watch, and
yeah, well,
he's a new member of the family. So we're excited.
Yeah,
but
that's
so I got two boys now.
Well, I've got one. He's going to turn 3 in January, and I'll tell you, it's a blast of an age having a near 3-year-old. So. I don't know, thinking back on the havoc that he wreaked as a young child, like young child, I don't know about having 2, but good luck with that and congratulations.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We got a jam-packed show. We appreciate you coming on, and whatever Evan promised you, we'll do our best to deliver, but I know sometimes he overpromises. But you want to kind of just talk about what you do and kind of what your role is right now with WHL Saskatoon Blades.
Yeah, certainly. And you know, it's an interesting time to talk about that because it's changing so rapidly in our league with the NCAA easing their restrictions on CHL players. They used to consider them pro players. They no longer. So now players can play in our league and go to the NCAA after, which is fantastic for all the players at our level. It's just great to be able to develop from 16 to 20 at our level and then be able to go on and play Division I hockey after. But I'm heading into my 11th season with Saskatoon. My primary responsibility would be overseeing the prospects draft, which currently has 2 phases. One is the American phase, which has 2 rounds, and the other is this sort of quote-unquote Canadian phase, which has, you know, in theory, an unlimited number of rounds, but most teams draft 10 to 12 players. We draft them when they're playing AAA Bantam or U15, as it's commonly called now. So this year, it's players born in the year 2010, and that's how we build our team. In our league, there's no free agency. In our league, if you find the equivalent of a Connor McDavid or a Leon Draisaitl, you get him probably for 3 years, maybe for 2. You know, we only had Kirby Dach for a couple of seasons in Saskatoon because he made the NHL as an 18-year-old. You know, so it's that constant state of turnover. We, you know, where an NHL team can do they can do fine if they hit 1 good player a draft. They can do great if they hit 2. You know, we need 5. We need 5, and that's you're constantly turning players over. So on top of that, you know, there's obviously recruiting. There's players that don't get drafted that develop later on, keeping tabs on them and trying to find them. And recruiting has been a big part of the job because up until now, players have had that Division I option and they've had to choose. Now recruiting will be significant because American-born players will come up more often.
Right.
Whereas if you're from a hockey state like Minnesota, you grew up, you want to be a Golden Gopher. Well, now you can be a Blade for a couple of years and then go be a Golden Gopher. So it's going to dramatically change the landscape of our league, I think, in the next couple of years, and provide a lot of younger players opportunity to play in our league that might have had to choose before, and it's going to allow our older players to go on and continue their career after. So that's sort of a brief overlook of what I do as essentially overseeing the prospect selection and development for our club.
So
well, I know. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. My co-host always cuts me off.
I really do.
So I was going to say, obviously, you have lots of time on your hands, Dan. But what advice then do you give to some of those players that you don't select at the WHL draft time, like that maybe we're really hoping to get? Like, what's the advice that gets given to these kids?
For sure, I think it's it's something that I try to do as much as I can, because we get to know a lot of these players, right? Like, that's a huge part of what I do. You would think it's like I'm going to go to Sherwood Park Arena or Planet Ice in Delta or the Hockey for All Center in Winnipeg or any of these places and just look for players and find them. And that's part of it. But, they're 14 years old. And, a huge, maybe the biggest differentiating factor to their success is how hard they work at it and their commitment level and their desire. So my advice to the younger guys who don't get selected is you've got a long runway here. Like, I'm drafting based on a snapshot of today. And as much as I want everybody to think that I'm a genius at what I do, if I'm right 40% of the time, I'm the best at what I do.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, that's 40% would be an unbelievable success rate. So that means I'm wrong more often than I'm right. And that's the message that I communicate to young guys is I have seen any number of stories from 10th rounders making our team at 16 to undrafted players playing in the league at 16. Our player development coach, Dustin Cohn, who played in the NHL as a defenseman, was not drafted in our league, played in the league at 16, was drafted in the NHL at 18. So you tell stories like that where just keep at it. And if you really want it bad enough, the potential to get there is significant if you want to outwork everybody else every day.
Okay, well, so then you're out in the stands, you're watching, whether it's Sherwood Park, whether it's somewhere in Western Canada. What are some of these qualities that you're looking for from players on and off the ice? Is there like a category? Do you have like a criteria? Do you have like a worksheet that you're working through?
Yeah, so every team would do this differently. We grade players based on 5 categories and then a couple other, we'll say, gut analysis on potential. You can have players that grade really well, but you still see a little something with their potential that's either more or less than you might think it is based on the grades. So we have categories, and to break it down, basically, I'll give you our top 4 categories and then keep the 5th one sort of separate. But we're grading hockey sense, skating, and skill level. Those are the first 3. Everybody's going to grade on those. Yeah. And then we allow a grade for our scouts, which is basically how bad do you want them? There's certain player types where, whether it's body language, work ethic, stuff you've heard, just whatever, there are guys that are going to make themselves more desirable to you than others. Like, and I'll use an Oilers example for this, like, Zach Hyman and Jeff Skinner, right? And I don't want to put Skinner down. I think he's been playing better of late, but for all the folks that watch the Oilers, Hyman would be a 10 out of 10. Like, you want that guy on your team badly. And Skinner, depending on the night, he's okay. He's offensively, he's goal scoring, but maybe isn't moving the needle for you with as much passion as a guy like Hyman might. So that's how we grade. But the key ones are hockey sense, skating, and skill. And, we can argue which order they need to go in. I would say for me, it's a really, really close tie between hockey sense and skating. Skill level is great, but if you can't think the game fast and you can't move fast, it ain't going to matter. The way the game is going today, you can play fast if you're an average skater, but very, very smart. You can play fast. But if you don't have a pretty good combination of skating and hockey sense, it's going to be really tough for you. So that's the quick answer on the tools part. On the rest of it, you know, body language, attitude, work ethic, it's everything. A guy that wants to play the game one way, a guy who's inconsistent, a guy who lacks a compete level, and I'm not talking about physical willingness, but a true compete level. Those things are hard to overcome as a hockey player, especially as a young hockey player. You're looking to be, you're looking to set yourself aside through determination and work ethic. You need those things because when you're 14, you're not a finished product. You got to really bust your ass for years to get where you need to be. And I've seen lots of guys at 14 are as good as they'll ever get. And, you know, as a young player, you have to understand that it takes that commitment every day to get better. So, you know, body language and work ethic and all of those things are huge parts of what we look at as well. And I just want to say one more thing, which is a very common question I get. I do not care about size. And I'll say that again, like I do not care about size. The pro guys will. Certainly the pro guys will. I don't. If you can get 5'6" or 5'7", you know, I guess if you're 5'2", you're going to be challenged. But, you know, if you can get to 5'6" or 5'7", you're going to be just fine if you can play the game. You know, the only position in pro sports that's getting smaller right now is NHL defensemen. You know, they're wide open to taking those guys. NHL forwards have been getting smaller for years. So, you know, at our level, it's even more so. The game is changing so rapidly. So if you're an undersized player, don't worry about it. Just get better. Just keep working.
So it was interesting. You were talking about Zach Hyman. So one of the U.S. head scout, Everett Silvertips, Michael Devellano. So he's been on our show a few times. And he actually had the chance to coach Zach out in Ontario there during that time. And he was just saying, even though he was lacking some of the skills and finish, and it was his work right there, right? Yeah, but okay, so what are some of the common misconceptions maybe about the WHL draft process that players and or families might have? Is there anything you could think of that they might have some misconceptions?
For sure. I mean, I can come up with a couple of things off the top of my head. The first thing is, again, like size doesn't matter. So if you're 6'3" or if you're 5'4", you know, again, you still got to be able to play the game. So I'm not going to lie. Like if you're bigger, all things being equal, that's going to help your stock. You know, but I'm very, very willing to pass on a bigger player to take an undersized guy who I think is smarter and more skilled. So that's the first thing. Second thing I'll say is do not ever, 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 ever pay attention to any rankings you see published on the internet or newsletters, or they're just so and look, there are guys out there that are independent scouting services for our league that do a good job, you know, and they work hard and they attend games, but their list making and their rankings, I have never seen one in a decade that has been remotely accurate outside of maybe some intel that they have from top teams. I've seen guys rated in the top 10 go in like the 7th round. I've seen guys go in the top 10 that were not even ranked on certain newsletters. I've seen everything. So please don't pay attention to public rankings. And then the third thing I would say is please do not think that points are everything. Like don't call me and say, hey, my kid had 80 points or 70 points or 60 points. Again, there are a lot of players who are skilled, skating ability, hockey sense, compete level, work ethic, all of it goes into it. So, you know, if you're a guy that has a lower point total, but you've got that, you know, again, to use the example, you've got that Hyman in you where this kid is just going to will himself to be something. You know, we can see that and we watch for that. And I think, you know, we will quite commonly have guys, I want to think like the top level that we scout now is the Canadian Sports School Hockey League U15 prep. Off the top of my head, I would guess that there were 3 or 4 of the top 20 in scoring in that league last year not get drafted for a variety of reasons, right? So, and those are tough conversations afterwards where parents will call and say, man, like you took, I had this example this year, actually. You took a kid that my son played with, and my son had more points than him. And you sort of go, okay, but here's X and Y and Z, and you be honest with the reasons, and maybe they like it, maybe they don't. But it's not about showing up and scoring the most points. That's a part of it, but it's not everything.
Great advice.
Okay, so then when you're approaching these decisions, and they're tough, right? Because people are trying to make life decisions, and especially these kids, like, what is my pathway to? Am I doing this? What is the role of analytics? I know it's become a bigger topic of discussion. I know there's more sites that kind of revolve around it. The NHL now with their app, you can kind of dictate like how people play, what positions of where they're shooting from, things like that. How do you as a scout approach that and use that technology or that information when making a decision?
So I would say there's two phases to that. One is the analysis of players who are actively in our league. There are a number of analytics services that operate on video and will provide us with every detail we want, every data point we want after a game on every player in the league, broken down by every shift they play, who they play against, all this stuff. I'm not going to say it's remotely near the NHL level, but it's quite detailed. And for players that are playing in our league, including players on our team, we will use that data quite significantly. For my process, looking at U15 players, here's the challenge. There's a dozen or more leagues that I scout, and coming up with equalization from league to league is very difficult. Coming up with good video from league to league is very difficult. And coming out with somebody that's able to track the data is also very difficult. It's too big an undertaking right now with how spread the guys are in the various leagues they play in. So what we do is we will take a very, very rudimentary analysis of point totals at the end of the year. And we've got a guy that we hire every year who, God bless him, will go through every game sheet for about 400 different players and will eliminate the points scored against the bottom third of teams in his league and slightly elevate the points scored against the top third of teams in his league and give us a rough idea what their sort of actual point totals are in a year. And you will have guys that get absolutely crushed when you do that, right? You will have guys that just absolutely beat up poor teams in their league. And in most cases, you see that in the eye test, but in some cases, it gives you a little something to deal with. And then obviously our management group who don't see the players as much, they will use video. But really at the U15 level, analytics isn't a big part of it. It's just not a feasible venture at this point.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. When like it is interesting, some of the analytics out there, but like that one makes sense when you say they beat up. I mean, are they still? They don't have to play a 200-foot game in those games that are tight against lower teams. So okay, so what advice do you end up giving a young player who's actually hoping to be drafted? Like what are you telling them they need to do to get themselves ready?
Yeah, I would say a few things. Like again, the biggest thing that we want to see is commitment level. There are very, very few players like, again, I can remember watching Connor Bedard when he was 12, or, Gavin McKenna when he was 12, or Maddox Schultz, who's gonna be, likely the first overall pick this year, who's playing U18 in Regina. Players like that, like, I say they're the players my wife could walk into the rink and pick. And I'm not being misogynistic with that. I'm just, my wife knows nothing about hockey, right? She can, knows nothing about hockey and walk into the rink and say, hey, that guy's pretty good.
She seems to have that in common with Evan.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So for 99% of the guys, it's commitment level, because like I said before, none of them, or very few of them, are going to be complete or nearly complete at 14 years old. So it's the commitment level to understand this is going to be years of work, and I want to do it. I want to get up every day. I want to work out. I want to take my nutrition seriously. I want to be the best in practice. I want my habits in practice to be elite level. I want my habits in game to be driven towards team success and not individual success. I want to show up at the rink and be coachable. I want to take feedback without getting my back up. Like I want to understand my coaches are trying to help me. The scouts are trying to help me. You know, I want to be a good teammate and all of those things. So to me, that's the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 thing. It's just that commitment level across the board, on the ice and off the ice, to wanting to do it. And then, you know, beyond that, I would say that if you're good enough, we will find you. So a lot of people right now worry about, where am I going to play? Am I going to play at this academy or in this league or get this exposure or whatever the case is? You know, and I'm not going to lie to you. Like if you're playing tier 3 at U15, it's probably not in the cards, you know, but if you're playing in this league or this AAA or that, you know, or even if you're playing a AA at 15 and then move up to AAA at a later age, if you get to a point where you're good enough, we will find you. So, you know, don't spend a ton of time worrying about, are scouts seeing me? Are they going to do this or that? You know, the hockey world is a small enough place and there's enough people looking that you'll get found. So, and then the third part that I would say to it is, anybody that gets picked in the draft, whether it's first round pick, 10th round pick, again, there are very good players who do not get drafted. That team really likes you. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys I've picked in the 8th to 12th round who have turned out to be excellent, unbelievably good. You know, the starting goaltender right now for the London Knights, who we couldn't keep as a 20-year-old, ended up going to the Ontario League. I picked him in the 12th round, right? Like I picked another goalie ahead of him. You know, so, you know, whatever that number was, like 220th in the draft or whatever he went. If you get picked, it's a massive, massive opportunity. So don't worry about the number, the spot, anything like that. If you get drafted, it's a massive opportunity. And if you don't, you know, you have to decide whether you're going to use that as a, you know, as a chip on your shoulder to outwork the guys who did, or if that's just going to, you know, piss you off and make you, you know, not want to do it anymore.
Well, that's very interesting because, yeah, there's a lot to consider when you're getting into it. But of course, in today's social media age, it's status, is where you are in that level. It's that number, you know, to be the number one, to be in the first round, to have that. Even in the second round, you know, you have some potential, you know. Maybe people will take a second look at you. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, and I've had, again, in a decade, I've seen it all. I've had families tell me face to face, if you don't pick me in the first round, we're not coming. And my response to that has been, what if I don't have a pick in the first round? What if I pick you in the third round? You're still my franchise guy out of that draft. So what, you know, is that, you know, and what if you are my second or third guy picked? Do you not want good players to play with? Is the only thing you're concerned about with status? So I can tell you, when I get that, it's an immediate red marker. Just go play somewhere else. If you're interested in status, I'm not saying you can't make it. A lot of those players are really, really good. But for the people or families that are overly concerned with the number, I get really, really leery. What I want is, I want kids that are dying to be Blades. Like, I want kids that are dying to be in Saskatoon. I want kids like Jagger John, who we took in our 2009 draft class, our last one. He's a Fort McMurray kid who's been playing in Edmonton the last couple of years for a couple of different academies. We picked him in the third round. He was the leading point scorer of the Sports School League U15 prep playoffs. Like, he had 5 points in the championship game, overtime winner. This kid had every reason to be upset at where he went in the draft, number-wise. But he was just pumped because he got to be a Blade. because that was one of the franchises that he had done homework on. He was happy to go to all the rest of it. And he saw the opportunity. And instead of going, oh, well, I wish I had gone in the late first or second round or whatever, he saw the opportunity in Saskatoon, wanted to go there and wanted to be a part of it. And again, every guy that I've seen hit in the 8th round, 9th round, 10th round, 11th round, on and on, it's just guys that just they don't care. They're just like, thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to show everybody else they were wrong. And that's all they can do. And you know, again, we so commonly in Saskatoon have signed later round guys that people can look at our organization and know that that's true. So, you know, to me, anybody that's worried about status is very likely a player that just wouldn't fit into what we're trying to do with our club.
So then, could you, before Evan gets to his question, could you maybe talk about the dynamics now that have shifted? Because we've talked about players, but now in terms of the NCAA and everything opening up with the CHL, specifically the WHL for you, and in terms of when you're drafting, you're looking at players, but now players have that option. How will that dynamic change impact next season when you guys are scouting and when you're looking for those players?
Ask me again in a year or 18 months. Like and that's an honest answer. And you know, our league had massive long managers meetings a couple of days ago. Internally, I'm sure everybody has spent hundreds of hours talking about it in the last 6 or 8 months that we knew it was coming. There are still huge unknowns. You know, I think right now everybody's trying to adjust to it. I think one thing that will happen that's completely different than in the past there will be American players who get committed to by University of North Dakota, we'll say. I think North Dakota will pick up the phone and they'll call us and say, okay, here's the deal. You're going to take this player and you're going to play him from 16 to 18 and then give him back to us. And that's a player that would never have come to our league before. Would have played probably USHL, NAHL, one of those American leagues, high school hockey for a couple of years. I think we will get more of those guys. So our league will have more Americans in it in the next year for sure. And I think our league will get younger. I think there will be exceptional guys at 19 and 20 that will look to move on sooner. Which, you know, I think if you're talking about more young American players coming up, you'd be tempted to think, well, less opportunity for Canadians. But I think because the league will get younger, I believe the same number of spots for good young players is going to be there at the end of the day. So that's sort of my rough guess is more Americans will come into play and the league will get younger. How much of those things actually happen? I'm as curious as anybody to see unfold over the next 12 months. I can tell you for sure, there will be young players out of our league that go early and find out the NCAA is a really hard league for a 19 or 20-year-old player because the average age of that league is significantly higher. So I think you'll have guys going first line to fourth line or red shirt there. So I think you'll see guys go and come back and then go again, to be honest. And I think you'll also see some American players come up and realize our league is better than they might think it is. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the success level that players have, whether it's our players going down there or their players coming up here.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of we'll just use the word for PG here, poop show for some of the rules. I know in the new year, it looks like we might have the director for college Hockey College Inc. Will be on to talk a little bit. I mean, I've been given some information around even UCLA looking at getting a team, and there's a lot of expansion potential. I mean, it makes sense, right? You have a whole vast of people to pull from. But my question is around two things, and you probably can't answer these, Dan, is number one, if they hit 18, I know there's rumors. I don't think there's any issue with Gavin McKenna leaving Medicine Hat, in my opinion, because he's going to be playing in the NHL likely, right? So, but will they just be able to up and leave? There's no choice in the matter for the WHL, OHL, or the Q, or The other question that I have is, will there be transfer agreement payments? Like, so if they take them from you guys or vice versa, is that possible?
Great questions, both of them. If I answered them, the commissioner of our league would be very unhappy with me.
Okay,
What I will tell you is the honest answer is up in the air, right? Like there are obviously things that are being discussed right now. Those are obviously things that we're trying to figure out. You know, you're trying to guess right now what the various impacts will be. If this, then that. If this, then that. And we're going through all these different scenarios. And some stuff has been ironed out, and some stuff hasn't. And there's, you know, quite a bit of, you know, you're talking about legal liability and all those things too. So a lot of it's up in the air. A lot of it, you know, some things might be challenged the first time they happen, and we'll see. But those are questions that are, you know, actively being discussed. And, you know, again, that's back to the sort of talk to me in a year thing, where I honestly don't know where some of that stuff is going to land.
Interesting.
So we know here on the show we like to tackle all things prospects. Evan does his Rev Top 15, and he loves to really highlight some of the players that are up and coming and really just highlight where they'll end up in their career. I know he wanted to maybe ask about some prospects that we should be keeping an eye out right now that you believe should get a shout out, but he also wanted to know a little bit about Ben, and I could be mispronouncing his name, Ben Rich or Rich, and just kind of Richie, and just kind of talk about him as a player, what he brings to the team. He's got quite a few points. He's 19 years old. What are his chances of getting drafted potentially? Could he have a breakout year? Your thoughts on him?
Well, there's no question he's having a breakout year. Ben Reich is how you say it. But I mean, if you go around our league, it's pronounced by every PA announcer, every play-by-play guy a little bit differently. The only guy who I've heard more commonly mistaken as our captain for a couple of years was Aiden Delagorjandier. And that was, boy, we heard about a million different ways of saying that. But yeah, Benny's been excellent for us. I mean, he was a guy after having an unbelievable run last year where we missed the league final by a goal in Game 7 overtime against Moose Jaw. We lost a bunch of our scoring, and we lost our first line center, Trevor Wong, who is now with U of S Huskies. We needed a top line center, and we were able to make a move with the Victoria Royals to pick up Ben. And we knew, or we figured, that with some offensive opportunity on our top line, he would succeed. Did he think we would succeed at this level? I mean, I'd like to tell you that we're that brilliant. We thought he was going to have a really nice year for us, but he's exceeded our expectations. I think he's a prime candidate for pro teams to look at, certainly. You know, bare minimum, thinking camp invite. I mean, look, the thing with Benny is he skates unbelievably well, too. So, again, you've got a high skill player, high offensive creativity, significant ability to skate. You know, I think he's a guy that, with some opportunity, is showing what he can do. And I think his career trajectory in the next, you know, 18 to 24 months is going to be really, really interesting to follow. So, you know, he's obviously a guy that has popped for us. In terms of other guys that we have on our roster, you know, I think, you know, obviously there's Evan Gardner, who's already been drafted, second round pick of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's the rock of our team in net. He's one of those rare goalies who at 6'1.5" NHL teams will still look at. That's a size that is largely considered too small by pro teams now. But Evan's just special. And if you meet Evan and talk to Evan, it goes way, way, way off the ice too. Unbelievable mental composure, maturity, commitment, all of those things. So, I mean, that's obviously another guy to look at. Tanner Molendyke would be sort of he'd be our sexiest player, first round pick of the Nashville Predators. I think he's the best player in our league. You know, he's a defenseman at 19 years old now. That is, you know, he's certainly the best skater in our league. He does it all. He defends exceptionally well. Cardio wise, could play 35 minutes a game and be fine. I think he's the most valuable player in the league, and is obviously just a treat to watch for us.
Yeah.
And then, up front, David Lewandowski is a player that's going to get a lot of attention this year. He's one of our imports. He's German. He came over after the start of the season. He tried to start in DEL. That's hard. It's a men's league. They're trying to win. They get a ton of fans. Even Draisaitl didn't play there as a young guy. Came over to Prince Albert to play in the CHL instead. Lewandowski's got big-time potential. I think he's going to play his way into being a top 60 pick in the NHL draft. You watch our team every night. He's like, I compare him to a, and don't hold me to this comparison directly, but the way he plays the game is like Jaromir Jagr. He's just heavy. He's got that big hockey core to him, sees the game extremely well. You can't take the puck off of him. Just sort of one of those sorts of players. And then we've got a couple exceptional 16-year-olds too, that people want to pay attention to next year. Cooper Williams is the leading 2008 born scorer in our whole league. Late second round pick in the 2008 born draft, and early second round pick Zach Wilson, also from Calgary. 6'2", power, elite skater, explosive. I think he's roughly half a point a game right now. Those are a couple of guys to keep on the radar for next year too.
That is amazing. Thanks so much, Dan. So thanks for taking the time, guys. This is the director of scouting for the Saskatoon Blades. So I do have a question from Zylstra. She's texted over to me, and she does want. We have to ask you a question, and everyone loves the NHL. So the question is what is the most interesting storyline right now in the NHL for you?
Oh boy, the most interesting storyline right now.
Or it's got the one that's got your interest anyway.
I mean, I'm a massive Oilers fan, right? Like I'm a diehard, listen to radio, podcasts, Twitter every day. Oilers. So I mean, I guess right there today is an interesting day with the Four Nations Cup announcement for Team Canada. Skinner obviously hasn't had the start of the season everybody's wanted, and he doesn't make that team. Bouchard gets left off the team. Hyman gets left off the team. So that's really interesting. That's really interesting to me. One other thing I would say, just because we played against him in his final game in the Western Hockey League, eliminating him from the playoffs. Connor Bedard in Chicago. Speaking of guys that were left off that Four Nations team. And that's not the angle for me. The angle for me is like, when is Chicago going to take a bit of a step? Guys like Bedard, man, are they hungry? And they want to get in the mix, and they want to win games. And, it's got to be tough for Connor right now in Chicago. So I'm not saying, hey, look, I think he's going to want out or this or that. I'm saying more like, what is Chicago going to do to surround him with that and provide him with that? What moves are they going to be able to make to improve that team in the next 18 months to get him, some playoff experience young in his career, which, he's obviously significantly hungry for. So that's sort of where I land on storyline wise in the NHL.
No, that's very interesting, because there's a lot going on, and definitely you can make a case for some of the players you mentioned for the Oilers to be on Team Canada, but then you have someone like Victor Arvidsson, who's injured right now, being selected. And I mean, I know the lines aren't set up, but it was being projected as top line for Team Sweden, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, Arvidsson, and you're excluding William Eklund of San Jose, who's had a really strong breakout season. Could be a Calder finalist, really, really showcasing what he can do over there. San Jose is really fun hockey to watch. But go ahead.
No.
I mean, San Jose, that's a great point you make. And I'll tell a quick little story. So my son's name is Macklin. And my wife, I didn't tell my wife until after he was born and we named him. But we had our girl's name. Our girl's name was going to be McKenna. And we drafted Macklin Celebrini's older brother. So Aiden was a Blades draft pick. I first met Macklin when he would have been like 9 years old. when he came up to training camp with Aiden the one year when he was drafted, he was really, really young. And when we found out it was going to be a boy, we were trying Mac, and I said, well, what about Macklin? And sure enough, named Macklin. And now she's all, my wife is all aggravated that it's going to be a very popular name in a few years because Celebrini's so good. But yeah, I mean, they're a blast to watch. San Jose is so fun to watch, so talented. Ryan Warsofsky has done an unbelievably good job there as the head coach of that team. Obviously, Rosie's the GM there. Very, very good job in San Jose, and they're a blast to watch in large part because Celebrini is the real deal as a hockey player. Unbelievably good. And for the record, just, I guess I should not be on the fence once I bring it up. I would have had Hyman on my Team Canada. I think the other two were fine to leave off. Skinner especially. The inconsistency to start the year, it's hard to argue. And Bouchard, at the end of the day, you got to build the team. You can't just take the best offensive players. Yeah. And if you already have a guy that's going to run your power play, so it's tough for him to be, in a country with that sort of depth because he makes every other team on the list. But I was fine with that one. But I just thought, especially on that third line, maybe, or fourth line for Canada, Hyman would have been a nice fit.
And so thank you. So thank you. I can't even speak right now. You got me speak. I'm just thinking that you were saying McKenna or Macklin, and I'm like, this is a hockey fan, if there's ever been a hockey fan. So I'm going to remember that story for all. Thank you so much. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure I know we planned this months out, so thank you so much, Dan, for doing that. And best of luck. I mean, you guys are having a great season so far, but best of luck as the season progresses with all the development of all the players that you've brought in.
Really appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me on, guys. It was a pleasure.
Take care. Have a great night.
Keep your stick on the ice. Guest headliner. Brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show. All right, bud.
That was wonderful. That was a great show. Appreciate Dan coming on the show and sharing his thoughts. It's always interesting to see that perspective, especially seeing these young kids come up through the, through the ranks, and just like that sometimes numbers don't matter, that there's more behind the scenes that you don't think is going on in terms of decision-making for how players develop and get into a higher league. But your thoughts, Evan?
Yeah, no, I loved that insights that he was able to give us. And so these are some of the questions we haven't had chances to ask, meaning because of his role, we were given that opportunity. So if you did just joining in now or just saw parts of it, go back, check out some of the information that he's the director of scouting for the Saskatoon Blades. How many years now did he say? 9, I think he's been there. So Dan Tencer, he's done a lot of work. He did a lot of work with the Oilers early on with radio. He's done some after with TSN too. And then he moved over, as he was mentioning, he's been with the Blades, done a great job. Great job. By the way, so I can just mention here. So thanks to the Lost Trucker, I actually do have. She caught the game between the Blades. Here we go. And the Brandon Wheat Kings earlier in the year and brought me back. I guess it's a puck, but I call it a hacky sack. So, all right, we got lots of stuff we want to get into. We talked a lot about junior. I do have some stuff on my revs, but why don't we just quickly cover, maybe let's just go about 5-7 minutes of some NHL talk. Is there anything that's really on your mind that you want to touch in on the NHL?
Well, the Four Nations thing was the big announcement today. All 4 nations being announced, and a lot of debate online on Twitter/X, on social media, in terms of players who were omitted. I think most people were kind of on board with both Sweden and with Finland. Pretty much who you expected to be on there. Of course, maybe 1 or 2 players that may or may not have made it. For example, like Rickard Rakell from Pittsburgh, I believe it is. He didn't make Team Sweden, which was surprising. That's somebody who's had a good season this year. But then, of course, Team Canada and Team US, the most discussion with the most players in the NHL, and some of the talent left off that roster. Go ahead.
Right. No, I was going to ask you, what would be your thoughts? Patrick Laine just gets back, and now he gets announced. And I mean, I'm worried if I'm the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, we don't know how strong the doctors are saying it's good. Man, that's a bit of a risk, though. I mean, to still go and play, I'd be worried about that if I was the team. I know you can't say no, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to look at it as also, because that was my worry. The playoffs are only a few months away. You know, if this tournament's happening in February, you're making a final push for the playoffs, and if some of these teams, let's take Toronto, if you're losing 3 of your top guys, because you got Matthews, Marner, and Nylander all going, right? You also have for team, I believe it is one of their Jani Hakanpää for Finland. He's going to be playing. You lose those pieces. What does Toronto do when they're approaching the playoffs and they're trying to make a competitive deep run? If you get Marner injured, if you get Nylander injured, if you get Matthews injured, that's a big loss, right? So I would be very wary about it. I understand what the NHL is doing, but I think this is supposed to be kind of a consolation prize for the Olympics that have been missed for the last few years. And I think the NHL needs to grow this in some kind of capacity. And maybe it needs to be a summer tournament, Evan. I got to be honest, just to change it up and switch it up. I know players have their own off seasons, but something during a different time, or maybe during the Christmas holiday break or something, because February just seems like a weird time for it to be happening. And that's just my personal opinion.
Well, and here, you know, I don't believe in jinxes, or if I say something, I don't believe fate happens. So if you're one of those people and say, Evan, don't say that. But I don't know many of these tournaments where there's not going to be one of those 4 teams, when NHL teams where one player is not going to be injured and not available for the playoffs, and they're going to be out, which is going to be an affordability issue. It's going to affect their team. And you're, like you said, you're only going to be a couple months away from pushing for some hard playoff spots. The timing, I don't like the timing. I like the idea, but I always like the old Canada Cup and then move to World Cup to be in the summer months. Let them come in August. It's a good build to warm up then going into training camp for them. Let the players who played maybe show up for training camp, maybe like 3-5 days later or something like that, you know, because they've already no, man, stuff like that, it's always a bother for me, and I always get concerned around that kind of stuff. So that would be my thing.
And let's remember, March 7th is the trade deadline. So let's say you want to make a trade for a player, and you may or may not have an injured player. You saw what Austin Matthews just went through going to Berlin or to Munich, to Germany, just to get inspected.
Wasn't it
you've
Cologne?
seen a few players. Was it Cologne? Sorry.
No, it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. No, that I think that's where Draisaitl's from.
But you know, he still went to Germany to check out some nagging injury that he was dealing with. He's back. He was able to play in the Chicago game on Monday night. But again, it's one of these things. You're missing a player, and you don't realize the impact it can make. And you want your star players to be your star players. So it'll be interesting to see. In other news, where did you want to get to? Did you want to talk about the Preds and what's it called, and their draft pick capital?
Yeah, before we go into it, maybe can I just kind of mention this? This is kind of bothersome to me. You talk about, like, everyone likes to brag on how great the Predators and like right now, I don't know if people recognize, but right now they are the second worst team in the NHL right now. I'll talk about that in my Revs Top 15 as well. But you know, when people start talking about where this franchise has come from and what they've done and all these great coaches and general managers, but I want you guys to take a look here. Their management, their first round picks, they've traded 6 of the first round picks over the last 10 over 10 years, from 2011 to 2010. So watch this. They traded away Seth Jones, okay, in 21. They traded away Kevin Fiala in 22. Fabro, they wait.
Brock Faber for the Minnesota Wild.
Okay. What's that? You're jumping in on all my numbers I'm giving?
No, you're right. Sorry, I was saying that Kevin Fiala trade with Minnesota was what turned out to be Brock Faber.
Right. Yeah, and then he's waived at age 26. So Fabro's waived. Tollivan was waived at age 23. Tomasino was just traded at age 23. Ascara was traded at 22. Like, what happened to this powerful team that everyone said had such great management and stuff? Man, I feel for Preds fans right now. They spend a lot of money and stuff like that. So there's Jordan. He's going at it. What is this here?
He's
Okay, let's
asking
do it.
about your beautiful, luscious hair you just grew. Why aren't you showing it off?
Well, I'm covering it right now. So, Jordan, my plan was next week I'm bringing the hair. So if anyone doesn't know, it's because it's a little bit of only if you follow me on my social media, that's how you'll know what he is talking about. It's an inside joke. I'm actually wearing hair, kind of like a wig. Let's just say that. So, but anyway, why don't we move before we run out of time? We have a few things. If there's something you want to cover too before we go to hockey history, let's go head over right now and let's go to my Revs Top 15 and do an update right now on the top 4.
Revs Top 15.
Brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music. So last week we kind of took a little bit of break. We had it was quite packed for the length of our show and stuff. So again, this week we're kind of running a little bit short. So it's a good thing we didn't bring as much content. We have lots for you. Could go overtime, but we'll be favorable this week and not go as long. Especially because if you have not heard, Pavel had another little one. So he's got the second guy for Two Guys in Hockey Talk to take over. But apparently they're not going to take over, because Jordan, one of our followers, Jordan's already planning to get him enlisted into the WHL and pay for the kids. So Pavel and his wife are sending their 2 boys in the future to be future WHL. And Dan Tencer just said today he'll watch out for them.
Okay.
Okay.
Dan, they can be whatever number they want to be. I don't care. Draft them now.
Yeah. And Dan, remember, you said it doesn't matter how many points they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
0.
So I told you I'm not moving James Higgins out of the number 1. I am about to, unless things change. So since it's been 2 weeks since the last show. He has played 3 games in that point in time, has had 4 points. He's finally got a couple more goals. We're putting him in 13 games now with 15 points. Buddy, this is still not good enough for me, Pavel. I'm just not happy with what I'm seeing. I know it's NCAA. I know it's men, but you cannot send him there. He can't be playing there. And then, like, we look at the other players that have come out of there, like Macklin, Celebrini, and others. They have still performed quite well. Even someone like Carter Savoy, he actually still performed quite well around that same time. A little year older, but still. Now, Michael Misa, who I see is the guy that's been coming up lately. So he's lessened a little bit. It hasn't been as dominant, but what I'm hearing, talking to a few folks, his playing time has gone down a bit. They've been preserving it just because some of the games he's kind of got a lot of sweet time, if you know what I mean. But in 25 games, so he's had 4 more games in the last 2 weeks. He's got 7 points still, almost 2 points a game. 25 games, guys, 25 goals and 24 assists for 46 points. By the way, James is in American. Michael Misa is in the OHL. And the third guy, Porter Martoni, 6'3", 170. He's got, in his last 3 games, 2 points a game at 6. He's got up to 20 goals. So he's 50 points in 24 games. It's amazing. Another OHL guy. And I'm going to give you guys my number 4, who is also, by the way, Jordan, not a WHL guy. It is Matthew Schaefer. He's the defenseman with the Erie Otters. So he's still sitting there at 14 goals, 6. This guy, look for him to be a riser, though. Look, guys, for him to be a riser. And I've got to give my updates on Gavin McKenna. This guy's a phenom. It's incredible to watch him play. Again, this is another player who actually didn't get some of the sweet time. He's been trying to play him less and preserve when they have this weekend coming up. He's got 3 games coming up this weekend, so this will be interesting. 27. So in 27 games, he's got 18 goals, 37 assists. So he is now sitting with 30, 40, 55 points right now in 27 games. So he's more than 2 points a game. He's 16 years old. He's a draft 2 year out. So, talking about interesting things, that puts me to my mock. The Blackhawks right now would draft then James Higgins if we followed this pattern. The Predators would take Matthew Misa. Finally, they get a player. Hopefully they don't trade him. Montreal has been dropping in the standings. They take Porter. Ottawa gets Schaefer, so I guess his career's over. And the Ducks take Roger McQueen, who's been injured still to this time. But that's not unlike a lot of their other players that could be injured. as well. So, guys, that's my Revs Top 15 for the week.
Revs Top 15.
Brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music.
That was a pretty interesting list, and you guys can let us know what you think and if you agree with Evan or not. Now, before we get to around a little bit around the rink and then finish off with hockey history, we do want to say that we've got 2 articles up again on our website. We are there every week trying to get our stuff up. Christopher Onk did a great article about fantasy draft for Braden Shen, who's an underrated gem. Go check it out. It's a great article. I really enjoyed reading it. He gets stuff out quite often. Last week, he did a great report on Brady Tkachuk. And I know there's been rumblings in small circles in Ottawa saying they don't want him and they want him out. Be careful what you wish for out there. Ottawa, you don't want to get rid of a good player like that.
That'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
So, let's get into, Evan, Around the Rink. I know that you have some really good stuff to cover. So, Around the Rink.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
It's brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
Didn't have this mentioned, some of the things I told you we were going to talk about, but I would like to just say when it comes to the PWHL for the women's, I've had people tell me this. Some of you have commented. We've had discussions on X. I got some texts. And one of the things that's bothering people, Pavel, is the schedule. It's all over the place. You have to pay for multiple sources if you want to watch them. It's getting costly to watch PWHL. It's a very bad move the year you're ready in your second year to go with a name, and then you spread it all out. They're not going to buy the packages. You're going to
wasn't it free on YouTube last season or something like that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. It was.
Should do it one more year and then look for a service provider to include.
Yeah, I haven't pulled up. Maybe by next week I'll spend a little more time looking into that. What's happening? If there's a future plan. I know that they're coming to Edmonton to Rogers, so I'm planning to get out to a game. So if there is any of you want to email us and let us know, and you want to plan to get to a game, let's talk. Make sure you get a hold of us probably in the next week or two to let us know, because I need to be able to plan around tickets. You can maybe transfer me the money for the ticket, and we'll let you guys join us. We'll plan a 2 guys in hockey talk. I don't know if you guys like PWHL, but guys, it'll be a fun time if we can convince the cat to join us. He's only a few blocks away.
I will do my best. I've got a lot on the plate right now. I've also got a trip to see the Oilers play the Vegas Golden Knights in April with Jordan, so that should be a gem. I'll try to do a little bit of a video when we're there with some friends of ours who are big Oilers fans.
Okay.
And I'd like to shout out Jake quickly, who just recently posted a few videos that he went on this Oilers road trip where he was in Vegas, Colorado, and Utah. And he said he had a blast. Although, Evan, and it's not much of a rant, he said that the lower bowl yesterday in Vegas was half empty. What was going on there? Something food for thought, but either way.
Yeah. My understanding is that must be giveaways or groups that are sponsors, because they are paid for. So that's the downside when you got all these groups and venues, maybe MGM, other group. I don't know where they are. I would say do not allow MGM and those groups to sell out in the lower bowls, because then you don't have the true hockey fans, right? That would be my suggestion if you want to build the game. I like to just mention there's a whole bunch of other storylines, but we can leave them till later. The BCHL, we know that players have been moving. And of course, this was not a question I was going to put someone like Dan Tencer on the spot with some of my concerns around non-sanction in Canada and the CHL benefiting. I just don't think that that's fair. He came on our show to talk about WHL things, right? Yeah. But the BCHL, one player plays one game in a preseason, and they put that on a list saying that he's left the non-sanctioned league to head to the CHL. What? Come on. Are you trying to make your list look good? And what I cannot find, all this news about who's leaving the BCHL and the USHL, but no list saying who's leaving the CHL. And they say, well, they're going back to some of their junior teams. And okay, who are the junior teams? Because they signed away. So can you at least say they're going back to those teams? No, they're not giving us that information because there's no focus on that, because the whole focus right now is to show how much better they are than their competitor these past years, who sends to the NCAA the number one supplier, and that's the BCHL. I just don't think it's fair pool. That's all I'm saying. I know there's more things. This is about money. The CHL is a money maker, and I get it, but it's a little frustrating, I guess, on my part. And you know what I can say is I'm still frustrated. Hockey Canada hasn't got back. People connected to TSN and Sportsnet. I've had some connections. I won't share who they are. We started with some conversations. I had 3 different ones, very notable people. They started a conversation with me. I put out the facts, gave documents, and nobody now gets back to me again. And it's looking like, okay, because you don't want to say something about Hockey Canada and the CHL because you're kind of employed by them in the fact that you work with them. It's a bad look for Hockey Canada and a bad look for anyone associated with TSN and Sportsnet right now. For me, in my eyes, I'm just saying, guys, let's just talk about it. I just want to have a better understanding. If you guys not sure, please go check out the last 3-4 weeks of our shows around the rink stuff, and you'll kind of find some of that information out.
100%. Where else do you want to finish off? Do you want to finish off with hockey history or?
Yeah, let's go ahead. And if you think that you're done for your wrap, let's go ahead and end the show with some hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents Hockey History. Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers!
Well, I want to take you back in hockey history. It was incredible the last week to hear Chris Dingman on talking about hockey history, talking about Peter Forsberg and Joe Sakic, Patrick Waugh, the team he won the Stanley Cup with. Those are great stories. That's why we kept Chris, as he's called, the Dinger, on a little bit longer. But guys, I want to take you back to 1965. This is before I was born, and this is before, well, probably Pavel's parents even thought about the thought of having a boy. So in 1965, the legendary Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe of the Detroit Red Wings, he scores as the first player in NHL history to have 600 goals. And it got me going because I was thinking about the 600 with Sidney Crosby. And he did it on November 27th, which would have been what I was going to share last week in 1965. But in the NHL, Howe scored 801 goals in his regular season games, won 4 Stanley Cups. So 4 of them in the 50s now, all of them with Detroit. He was called Mr. Hockey. Now, Gordie Howe, the legendary Mr. Hockey, was known for his toughness and his skill on the ice. That's why it's called, the Howe, what they refer to it as the Howe trick, some of people, where you have a fight and you have a goal and you have an assist. So interesting. One story perfectly captures his legendary status I wanted to share with you. And it was a heated game against one of our followers, Kyle Edwards' Boston Bruins, or some of our writers are writing on the Bruins. They'll know they would have hated him, their ancestors before them. But during one rough, tough encounter, essentially, what ended up happening is Howe was in this heated exchange with this Bruins player. The opposing player was frustrated and maybe he was perhaps a bit intimidated. So he took a cheap shot at Howe. He was aiming for his head. But Howe, with his lightning fast reflexes and his incredible strength, because he was a really strong dude, he managed to kind of deflect this punch and he sent the Bruins player sprawling to the ice. Now, undeterred by anything, Howe continues and he skates towards the net and he scores a goal all at the same time. The stunned Bruin player was still recovering on the ice during Howe's goal. This is an iconic moment to me that perfectly encapsulates Howe's toughness, skill, and his unwavering, solidifying legendary status when it comes to hockey history. So, guys, that is hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents Hockey History. Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers!
Incredible story, Evan. Thank you so much for sharing. If you guys want to hear a hockey history story, feel free to write to us and let us know. Or if you want to share one, we'd love to have it with you. I think that's it, Evan, unless there's any final thoughts where we're going to wrap it up for the show. Remember,
That's
guys, we are here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We got articles on our Two Guys in Hockey Talk page. Go check it out. There's always something there on an ongoing basis. We write. We have great writers that share their content. We are on Twitter/X at hockey_2 or Evan at REVNEV. You can find us, chat with us, email us, whatever you need. We love hearing from you. It's been fun. Evan, any final thoughts before we finish off?
All good. Just big special thanks to Dan Tencer, Director of Scouting for the Saskatoon Blades of the WHL, which, if you're not familiar, is the Canadian Hockey League that has 3 entities in 3 different leagues to play for Memorial Cup every year. But thank you to Dan.
We'll be back next week. We appreciate you guys tuning in, for commenting, sharing, even the funny ones and some of the questionable comments. We love it. We're nobodies, but we love talking hockey, so come talk hockey with us. But Evan, as always, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your stick on the ice.
Stay safe. Have a good night, guys.
Cheers.